believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. So, of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Rendas, also known as Ricky Rendas, and a great episode for you today. Today we have my dear friend, and also one of the Four Horsemen, one of the founders, creators, and co-hosts of the great show, The Union of the Unwanted, my dear friend, Charlie Robinson. And every time he comes on the show, we always have a fun and interesting discussion, and this one is no different. Charlie is also a best-selling author and the host of the Macroaggressions podcast. So I'm assuming if you listen to the Ripple Effect podcast, you're familiar with Charlie Robinson. But if you're not, as always, go in the show description and you'll find links to my guest's website, their social media accounts, and much more. You'll also always find links to the Union of the Unwanted. Or you can go to the rippleeffectpodcast.com and find all the shows that I do, the Union of the Unwanted and the Ripple Effect podcast, all archived there. So check it out. And I do have to remind you, this is a Value for Value show. I've had so many people hit me up asking why it's taken so long to release shows or why it's been inconsistent. One, it's been a super busy summer. And two, there's nothing I value more than the time with my family. So unfortunately, from time to time, this show takes a backseat to those other priorities because it's not my full-time job. But if you love this show, if you want consistent Ripple Effect podcast episodes released on a regular basis, please consider giving some value back to a show that hopefully gives you some value. And as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the value for value philosophy. If you get something out of this show, these conversations, these guests that I bring to you, and all the hard work I put into getting this show on all the platforms I'm on, booking guests, editing, uploading, all the research and thought and effort that goes into putting together a podcast, please consider giving some value back. There's plenty of ways you can support the show. Obviously, financially, there's a bunch of ways, and you can find all these links on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com, or in the show description. But you can send a one-time donation via PayPal, via Venmo. You can send crypto to my crypto wallet. You can check out our sponsors. You can also support us monthly on Patreon, which is one of the best ways of supporting the show. And we have a couple new Patreon signups. So thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate it, especially when the signups come during a hiatus. But there's a bunch of other things I want to share with you guys. One, on my YouTube channel, and I did start a YouTube channel that is specifically just for clips so I don't get banned off YouTube again. And on that YouTube channel, I started a new playlist, a documentary playlist. So back in the day, before I got kicked off YouTube, I did have a huge documentary playlist where I would just gather documentaries I enjoyed that I could find on YouTube and put them on a playlist. So if anybody's ever bored, they could go on my YouTube channel, check out the playlist, and find something interesting to watch. Now, because I got banned off YouTube, that giant playlist disappeared, and so typically does a lot of the documentaries I put in the playlist. It was happening before. I'm sure it's going to happen again because some of these documentaries that are on YouTube will eventually be taken down for whatever reason. So check out my YouTube channel for awesome clips of old, great shows that maybe you forgot about or maybe you missed. And then also check out the playlist, the documentary playlist, if you're looking for something interesting to watch. I'll keep adding to it as I find more interesting documentaries to add to it. And speaking of censorship, I am now also on TikTok, which you can find those links in the show description now also. And quickly, I got censored and had videos taken off TikTok which is pretty crazy because all the videos that I uploaded to TikTok are videos that are on my YouTube Clips channel. So weirdly enough, some of the YouTube friendly clips that I uploaded to my TikTok have already been taken down. So follow me on TikTok while you still can. And like I said, also check out the rippleeffectpodcast.com for links to all my social media accounts, all my shows, all that stuff. You can also go to the unionoftheunwanted.com to find all the places you can watch, listen, and purchase merch for the Union of the Unwanted. We just started a Rumble channel, so subscribe to that. We will be live streaming on Rumble and on Rockfin now at the same time. And also remember to check out my merch store. The Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com will take you directly to my merch store if you want to get hats, shirts, hoodies, tank tops, whatever you're looking for. Check out the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or you can find that link also on my website, the rippleeffectpodcast.com. So finally, I think that's it. That catches you guys up to what's been going on. And I have tons of great episodes that I am looking to schedule and guests that I am in talks with that I'm really excited about. So hold on tightly. Keep on supporting the Ripple Effect Podcast if you can. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. So I won't expand any more than that, just in case.
No, well, I don't. We'll see how it all plays out. But I'm basically here in Vegas for a while.
So is everything on hold now? Like your whole.
Now, I'm able to do. I brought my laptop. I brought a computer or a microphone. I'm able to work from here. It's like having a office.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the nice thing about doing this full time like you are is you can do it remotely as long as you have access to the internet. You're in a computer. You're kind of okay. You can figure it out, even if it means like you gotta wing some things and maybe change the quality might downgrade slightly but I mean most people don't care. Most of the things that we're anal about listeners don't complain about.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I've got a 75% quality in terms of like my camera and my microphone, but I recorded all of August over the last 2 weeks of July so that I could have that done. I could have everything done for this month so I could just kind of hang out and be here. But, I lived here before and my business partners are here. I'm going out to lunch with Aubrey, one of my partners tomorrow. And my best friend lives down the street. So I've got people here. I'm fine.
How's your immediate family, your wife and daughter?
Well, they are right now they're in Florida. I wasn't going to be on that trip anyway. I was going to be at home. So I've been here for tomorrow will be 2 weeks that I've been here. So dude. And while I was here, I swear to God, this happened. We went to we went to the doctor and got my mom's diagnosis, which was a death sentence. Came home. My wife calls me and says, I'm evacuating our house. There's a brush fire coming over the mountain and everybody's evacuating. I'm like, oh my God, I can't handle this. Within the course of like 90 minutes. Now, they hit the fire with airdrops and everything and wound up getting it contained 3 days later before it burned our house down, but it came damn close. So I was like, I don't know if I could take this, man.
When people say when it rains, it pours, like that's very true. It seems like when things go wrong, like one thing goes wrong, or you run into one little bump in life, it seems like soon after there's like multiple bumps, and it seems like it's almost like scheduling your weekends. Either everything falls on the same weekend and it's chaos where or there's weekends where there's nothing going on. And
Yeah,
I feel like life's just like that all the time,
totally.
where you have like weeks where life's pretty repetitive, and then you have weeks where everything is that could go wrong is going wrong, and it's chaos. And that's why when I haven't seen people in a while, and people are like, "Oh, how are you? What's new?" And I'm like, "Not a whole lot." And I'm like, and I always add to that by saying, "And that's not awful." It's
Yeah, yeah. I could do without those major obstacles that you get. Uh, I mean, I can handle them, but if it's my preference would be for them to be spaced out enough so that I could kind of deal with it. I can't I can't come home and sit on the couch with my mom and try and process what she's going through and at the same time do a FaceTime call with my wife as she frantically goes through the office and says, "Point to what you want me to get. Point to what you want me to take out of here, to put in the car and get out of it." I'm just like, holy shit. uh my passwords, the safe, those pictures, like all of a sudden I'm having to do that too. And I was like, uh,
Yeah, I work really hard to try to be at peace as often as I can. I go to the gym every morning for my mental health. I
yeah,
People are always like, "Oh, you're so calm. You're so." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not like that's not my natural state if I wasn't doing the therapies I needed to be in that state. And
yeah,
maybe it is my natural state because that's kind of where I feel like I'm the most normal when I'm getting rid of some physical energy out, and then I can be just not ramped up all the time, and I can be like calm and collective and feel like I got some friction out. But it's life can just throw you curveballs, and it, I've talked about it in the past with my mother-in-law where she I wasn't directly affected per se, but I was indirectly affected because I was helping my wife as she was going through losing her mother to cancer for the second time, because the first time she had breast cancer, and everybody thought it was, really bad, and she wasn't going to make it through it because she never took care of herself in the first place. She was a smoker, a drinker. She just, never ate well, never ate much really. And
right.
she grew up in the restaurant world and bar scene and managing bars, well, waitresses, bartenders, and just like not sleeping right. This is my mother-in-law, and so when she had cancer the second time, and basically same thing happened where it kind of came out of nowhere. They said it was like a death sentence. She never left when she didn't feel good. Went to the hospital, she never left again. She didn't know that she was bringing herself to the hospital for what would be the last time she'd ever be outside of a hospital. And she
Yeah.
went, and they're putting her through chemo and radiation, and her body got so weak. And then they're like, "Hey, we got to stop the treatments because she can't handle it anymore." And you could tell she was like knocking on death's door. And then they would get her off the treatments, and then all of a sudden she would get better. And it was like, And I would tell my wife, I'm like, "I know this is not, I'm just here for support. This isn't my mother. This isn't, my side of the family where I would have, some more say in what was going on. I'm like, I'm just here for support as a spectator to get you anything you need." But I'm like, from my perspective, what I'm seeing is that the treatment's killing her faster than the cancer is. And it's funny. I literally just had this conversation with my last guest. It was a podcast that I was working on right before we started talking. I was just working on editing and whatnot, but it was with Cheney Nash, and from Project Cheney, and I didn't know, but she just beat cancer,
Hmm.
and it just and then today at the gym. rarely do people come up to me and like ask me about a news report that I didn't at least hear about being in our world. But somebody's like, "Hey, did you hear about those Brazilian doctors?" Or maybe the plane went down, or a
Mhm.
helicopter plane. It was a
Well,
plane went down in Brazil. Maybe it
mhm,
wasn't Brazilian doctors, but it
it
went down in
was.
Brazil, and with a bunch of cancer doctors, alternative cancer treatment doctors, and
Yeah.
whatnot. I haven't had enough time to look at. Have you looked into that, or have you heard?
I'm aware of it. My initial response was, did anybody have any experimental patents? Any of those doctors have something a la Freescale Semiconductor going on? You remember there's a lot of patent holders on that. And I get very nervous when large groups of doctors die. Microbiologists have had that happen to them. There was that group that was in the gondola in the Swiss Alps that had the cable severed, and like 20 leading AIDS doctors all got wiped out at the same time. So when I see these large mass cullings of doctors that are treating AIDS or cancer or whatever multi-billion-dollar industry that they could potentially disrupt, I get very suspicious. So again, that plane came down in a very unusual roll, sort of sideways almost, and I'm not an expert in plane crashes. I don't know. Maybe there's a very reasonable explanation, and maybe it was just random luck. Of course, could be, but that happens a little too frequently for my preference, and and I think the list of microbiologists that have been whacked over the last 30 years is really long, like
Well,
in the
alternative
triple digits.
people who look into zero point energy, people who modified engines, and
Right? You get a
found
car running on water,
yeah,
you're dead.
was Myers, something Myers, that guy. I mean, that guy, it's crazy how many stories there are of people just mysterious deaths. And then, of course, journalists, right? Webb, Danny Casolero. I mean, you can go down Seth Rich. Uh, just the amount of mystery deaths. It's like to think that they're all like explainable is just insane. It's same thing with like UFOs, right? Like there's probably some kooky people who saw some, but I'm like, they're not all. You can't explain all of them.
No.
And I mean, you're kind of into that topic a little bit too, because as regular OBDM listener, I'm assuming you're into some of those.
I am. I love it all.
Do you see it as entertainment, or do you see it as like are you into the topic as like a do you take it seriously, like
Yeah.
I guess in other words, like when you think of UFOs, do you think of life on other planets? Are you looking at it as like I seriously consider these possibilities, or is it just fun to ponder and explore these topics?
Well, I take it seriously in the sense that the um the UFO file has been a real important part of the American uh secrecy state, to keep that under wraps. That's been going on for a long time. It's got its tentacles into the military industrial complex, obviously, continuity of government. You start to get into these, um, the work that Catherine Austin Fitts is, and Mark Skidmore, professor out of Michigan State, have done on the missing money, $21 trillion and counting. Where is that money going? It's believed to be siphoned off into exotic space technology programs, secret space programs, things like. I'm not talking about those retards that are saying that they're going off to Mars on 20 and back missions. Those guys are mentally ill, paint huffing, delusional lunatics. I'm talking about the secret. I'm talking about the secret army, the secret air force, the secret funding mechanism that Daniel Inouye was talking about former senator, when he was talking about an invisible government that operates with its own separate military and its own separate funding mechanisms and things like that. You start to get into this group that is protecting advanced technology. And it's easy to be dismissive of it and little green men and all that stuff. But there is a huge emphasis placed on this. I mean, it's cosmic clearance is the highest top secret clearance you can get, man. The president's nowhere near having any of that. So that should tell you everything you need to know in terms of how they classify this material. I mean, you can be dismissive of it and I can be dismissive of it and everyone can laugh at these people, but they consider it to be extremely important that everybody shuts their mouth about it, to the point where people die all the time about this stuff. And, you've seen, if you want to get an example of how people can keep secrets about this stuff, just look at the 3 guys that are alleged to have gone to the moon first time around, who performed the most important task in the history of mankind and then proceeded to duck interviews for the next 25 years and drink themselves to death because they knew they were lying. So you've got a forward facing space program, NASA, which is just money laundering and overt fraud and green screens going on, just a constant FU to the general public. And then you've got a very real space program that is in the shadows behind it, that's doing God knows what, you know what I mean? And requiring a shit ton of money to keep it going. And so, yeah, I can understand why people would be dismissive of it, because it's easy to do that. And I have no personal experience with anything related to that, but I know people that have. I know people that have had those encounters. I've had them relay firsthand stories of their interactions with things. I had a guy who I would have never in a million years expected to confirm one of these stories, say, I saw it with my own eyes. I was right there. So I don't know, man.
Well, I've gotten more into the topic because of the links to suppressed technology, reverse engineering, all that type of stuff, and just the importance of the way it would shape our world. When you look at, there's a great documentary that kind of talks about these topics and more. I'm sure you got, everybody knows who Stephen Greer is.
Yeah.
The Lost Century and how we can reclaim it. It really goes into just all the suppressed technologies and how, like, it seems completely impossible to do the things that some of these scientists and inventors have done until you suspend the way you perceive reality and the universe and the things around you and say, hey, like, based on our understanding of reality, it seems impossible, but maybe there is, like, we've been kind of so Fred Durst is actually the narrator.
Fred Durst is narrating it.
It's funny. I've watched this documentary and I keep forgetting Fred Durst is the narrator, and his name just popped up, and yeah, right here, Fred Durst.
Is he good?
I honestly,
it didn't even notice. I guess if he didn't notice, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I didn't notice. He didn't. Yeah, he wasn't rapping the whole documentary, which would have been awesome. But imagine if he did that, some just white rap throughout the whole documentary. But this is also another great episode of the Y Files is pretty good.
I like Y Files.
Yeah, he did one on killer patents and secret science, and really he documents some of the same people that were in Lost Century, some of the same inventors. These people existed, and there's a lot. Actually, these names will come up over and over again. The documentary Gas Hole has some of them about suppressed engine technology and whatnot, car technology, who killed electric car. The documentary Pump, which I had John Bracken on, the automotive engineer, does another really good one. And these names will come up over and over again. And Tesla wasn't, like, he just had a understanding of the universe that was, and reality and whatnot, which was much more open than the person who's brainwashed by the university. You go to school, you're told this is the way reality works. This is what, how gravity works. This is how physics works. This is, so your understanding is all based on that. So you adopt their understanding of reality. It's almost like a musician who learns from another musician. Like you take guitar lessons and you end up maybe accidentally adopting their style. And then
Yeah.
the musician who says, hey, I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna take lessons. I don't want to adopt anybody else's style. I'm just gonna play with this instrument and then see what I come up with and just explore it and do that type of method of learning something. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what these inventors did. So and it doesn't seem like once you see these inventors talk, and it almost seems like, yeah, why isn't that possible? None of it seemed completely, not possible. It just you had to suspend your understanding of the way things work, of gravity, your understanding of this, and there's like the electric field, for example, and probably one of the most important quotes of Tesla, when he says, if you want to understand the universe, you have to understand frequency, vibration, and energy. And when you look at like the pyramid mysteries, some people believe that that was how they move things, right? It was like frequencies, or it was vibration, or using frequency to create vibration or whatever. But there's a way of manipulating our reality if we just understand those three things. And when you look at what they do with water, playing different frequencies and seeing water being manipulated, those type of things, like there's something more than what we know or understand. And maybe that was lost information. Maybe it was suppressed information. Maybe it's always been hidden from the public because that's how they control us. Because when you look at all these industries, the light bulb conspiracy, right? The way the light bulb mafia all got together and said, "Hey, we need to control how long these light bulbs can run for, because that's how we control the industry. Keep milking this cow, this energy cow." Same thing with like killing the electric car and suppressing the electric car technology because they wanted to milk the oil cow for a while, and now they're migrating to electric cars because they're now milking this cow. It's like whatever, like none of these things happen organically. It's always like control, control, control. We need to control this industry. We need to create the system, control it, and then we'll tell you when you can move on to the next thing. We'll tell you when you can now, and they'll kill all other, inventors or technology until they're ready to share with the world and find a way to profit from it. Because I mean, that's what happened with Tesla, right? Like JP Morgan said, hey, we can't make money off this. Well, it was actually wasn't it Edison who told JP Morgan, like, hey, you can't meter this, and we can't fund something that you can't meter, because if you can't meter, that means you can't profit from it. So there's no motivation, there's no incentive in funding Nikolai Tesla's research, which is going to end up, creating free energy. So it's wild, and I haven't looked too much into those World Fear podcasts that Tripoli did, but I wonder if there's a link to that too. If some of those inventors were also, highlighting some of that technology there, and then that's one of the reasons why they suppressed those historical events and world fairs. But it's all very fascinating.
I remember going to the 1982 Knoxville World's Fair when I was like 10. It was amazing. I had no idea about all the history of it until just recently. And I'm like you, I still don't know. I don't know enough. I just know that there's some questions. We have questions about quite a bit. Um, they've done a good job of suppressing who we are and what we are and where we are and you know what it all means. Um, Kept us down on the reservation fighting with each other. I mean, they've withheld this information. I mean, if free energy is a thing, and I believe that it is, I believe that there's enough people that have found something along those lines that's so disruptive to their current system globally that it's just better left undealt with until the oil situation just plays itself out, right? But of course, you know that they've got this technology somewhere, using it somehow, somewhere. But when we get it, we get the hand-me-downs after like your older brother and the other brother wore them, then you get those shoes. That's what we get, the general public.
Well, the thing is, the way Terrence Howard talks about the universe, and he's not the only one who talks about it in this way, that everything is energy. Everything has energy, requires energy, has energy going in and out. There is no energy crisis, right? Like this idea that you require a lot of energy to make a little bit of energy, and there's always that minus, there's always that giving up some energy to create energy, like philosophy is completely made up and
Yep.
pushed into our brains, because if you have something, if you always require something for this other something, then they can always control it. That means that we're always at a loss, and we always need them. We need their infrastructure. We need their whatever. To have this thing requires us buying this other thing, So, but when you look at like electricity, like there's electricity everywhere. I mean, I can, rub the carpet and create electricity. There's that theory of the electric world, that like gravity is actually what's keeping everything on the planet, is actually electricity and not gravity. And because they said that if gravity was strong enough to hold giant things on the earth, it would crush smaller things. And that, like, how does gravity know the difference between something that's really heavy and then something that's not very heavy, that's delicate, fragile, right? It's like there's which kind of, I mean, I'm an idiot, of course, and but
I'm
I
unqualified for this conversation, by the way. My science background
which
is lacking.
makes it fun. But you know what? Like, even people who there's some things that you just have to trust your senses. All the conspiracies rabbit holes that I've gone down in my life, and I've many of them I've hesitated. I'm like, am I just not qualified to know that this is bullshit? But a lot of times you just trust your senses. Like something's not right. Like even when, I've always been kind of a little bit of a gearhead, and always been in health and nutrition. And those are the two topics and subjects that I'm like, I might not be qualified, but there's something about what they're telling me that doesn't make sense. Like the fact that statins, I'm like, who comes up with this number? Like this, like you just come up, like the pharmaceutical company comes up with this number, and nobody's overseeing it and wondering like, okay, what am I gaining? What's the pros and cons? Like I go on a statin when before, well, whatever, they used to recommend it at like 300 or whatever higher number it was. Now they start recommending it at 200. I'm like, so they just lower that number, and they're basically printing money, because now you've picked up a huge extra percentage of the population who is in that number. There's no evidence that taking the statin, it will help your health and help you live longer than not taking the statin and just dealing with that, what they say is a dangerous cholesterol number. So it's like, all these things. And I'm like, but maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I don't get it.
No, you're not, because they've been sued for their statins.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point. My point is like so many things that were like the average person thinks like maybe I'm just not qualified, maybe I'm just not informed. A lot of times you have to trust your senses. Like if it doesn't make sense, it's because it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. Why, Daddy, why is the antidepressant drug being advertised on the nightly news, the side effect guy saying that side effects may include suicide? Why would you take a drug that could cause you to commit suicide if you're already manic depressive? You know what I mean? You see that and you go, wait a second. I'm not a doctor, and my dumbass knows that this is a bad idea. This is maybe not what you want. But it's like everything just gets presented to us as if it's normalized. Oh, yeah, no, chemo. Ricky, you got to take chemo. Chemo's the only way out. Do you know what the success rate over a 5-year period of chemo is? 2.1%. That doctor asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "We're not doing chemo." And I said, "What else do you have up your sleeve?" And he said, I offer you a prayer. That's what he gave my mom, a prayer, and 90 days to live. I took it as a challenge. I'm offended by it.
That's
So,
great. But
so
isn't there statistics that show that a lot of cancer doctors don't go through chemo or radiation or one of the two? Or
oh yeah. Oh, they know it's bullshit. No, one of the other things about chemotherapy is it's one of the few industries, it might be, I think it's the only industry inside the medical panopticon that allows the doctors to purchase the drugs, the chemo drugs, at wholesale and mark them up to retail value and then sell them at retail value. So they'll buy chemotherapy drugs for $5,000 and mark them up to $50,000 and pocket that $45,000 difference. I think it is the only one that your area where you're able to do it. So of course, oncology is a huge ass industry for obvious reasons. It's funny to me that it's, the second leading cause of death in America is cancer. But the third leading cause of death is the American medical industry. So take your pick, you know?
well, when I had Dr. You ever watched the Brzezinski documentary with Dr. Brzezinski?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude, it'll pull your heartstrings. He was one of the first big guests I had on my show, probably like late 2013, early 2014, and I was kind of stunned that he was on, that he was willing to come on because I'm like recording on a laptop and it just wasn't professional looking or sounding or anything at all. But he just cared that much about sharing his story, and his documentary was like viral at the time on YouTube. It's a little harder to find out, but I'm sure somebody's still uploading it because they know how important it is to get it out there. But it's called Cancer, the business of the big business of cancer, something like that, something along those lines. But you can just look up Brzezinski documentary and it'll come up. And it was this filmmaker Eric Mercola who was also on. He did some other documentaries on stem cells and other things related to those type of topics. But he was on, and my co-host at the time, who one of my best friends, he was super skeptical because he's like, everything I look up about this guy is saying that he's a murderer, he's this, he's that, and I'm like, good. I'm glad that you're skeptical because I'm a huge fan, and I might fanboy out the whole show and not ask any hard questions or whatever, and then maybe I'll do a disservice to having him on because the skeptical people are going to be like, all you did was, tell him how great he was and share all the amazing stories or whatnot, but you didn't grill him, you didn't ask him anything. So my buddy Dave, he came on, he asked some questions, and we try to have a friendly pushback and kind of go like really get an understanding of his own personal story. And he came out as a believer. I feel like I brought an atheist to a Christian church, and he came out saying,
Right.
amen, Holly. So it's like so it was one of those experiences. And what's crazy is in his documentary, there's a part of it where they talk about all the people who go online, all these fake accounts paid by Big Pharma, these companies that are literally designed just to discredit him. And this was real early in my podcast journey, and I didn't have a lot of followers or listeners. And I got super excited to have him on for that reason because I didn't have a lot of followers and listeners. And I just shared it on Twitter, Facebook, MySpace. I don't know where I was in 2013 and 14, but wherever I was sharing it on my social media accounts. And all of a sudden, I get all these fake accounts going. He's a murderer. He's pseudoscience. He's this and that. And I'm like, they do such a good job of keeping up with anybody that's referencing him that even a small little, startup podcaster like I was, who just tweeted a little comment about how excited I was to have Dr. Brzezinski on my show. It was the most activity I ever got on any post about my podcast at the time. It was like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, this is exactly what he talks about in the documentary. I'm like, this is real. This is actually happening. And if they're going after somebody small like me, I'm sure if any major platform brings him up, they're definitely going there and writing comments and trying to keep people skeptical of what he did. But he was considered a medical genius because he got his PhD at such a young age. He's a Polish immigrant. He was sought out by so many different big hospitals and clinics and whatnot. And then he found this thing called anti-neoplastones where he was having success with treating cancer. And he got it FDA approved, and then he patented it, and then he was going to get it FDA approved, and then all of a sudden they refuse to get the FDA approve it, and they go after his patent and they bring him to court, and he's going to court over and over and over again, and because it wasn't approved, people could only use this treatment if you're terminally ill because it was considered experimental because it wasn't FDA approved yet. So he could only treat people if they're terminally ill, and they're suing the shit out of them. And there's all these people who were survivors of cancer who had death sentences said, hey, you have 90 days to live, you have 6 months to live, and they're going to court testifying for him and saying, hey, I was told years ago that I wouldn't be alive longer than 90 days or a year or whatever. And he's like, and I'm here now testifying, and this guy saved my life. And there's, the thing is, there were people who he treated who didn't make it, that didn't survive, but they were terminally ill. Like the mainstream medicine already said, we have nothing for you. Good luck, right? And yet there's many of those people that he did help that did survive. And what's crazy is in the documentary you'll see protesters outside the courtroom protesting for him, like basically supporters saying like and like a local news station like interviewed him, like, who are you? No. And they're like, oh, we're jury members from the last time they brought him to court. They're like people who were just so moved by the story that now they were out there.
Wow.
And there was so it opens up with like just it tugs at your heartstrings. This actually, maybe I could find the trailer instead of me doing a shitty job trying to explain it. But it opens up with a police officer documentary. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Maybe the trailer will pop up. Actually, the whole film is on. Wow, you can actually still find it on YouTube. Let me see if I can just find the trailer though, because the trailer will pull at your heartstrings.
When did this movie come out? Do I know?
I mean,
You talked to him in 2013, so obviously before that.
yeah, way before that.
2010.
Bruh.
Have they what's he doing now? They put him in jail?
Well, what's funny? I heard that he ended up getting his patent back, right? Or that he won something in court. They kept bringing him to court. In the documentary, there is a part in the documentary where one of the judges looks at the government attorney and goes, you guys keep suing this guy and keep losing. Like he didn't do anything criminal. And like you're wasting taxpayers' money. This is what he says to the government attorney. I don't know if it was the FDA attorney or the patent attorney, whoever it was that represented the government. And this guy says this to the attorney. And in the documentary, I think they talked about in the documentary that they knew they couldn't win. He didn't do anything wrong. What they're trying to do was trying to get him to basically run out of funds and eventually just run out of money.
Right.
And
Right.
so somebody from the Saudi family went to him, heard about his treatment, went to him. Some head guy at the CIA went to him. Like he had some crazy, patients who went there and believed in, heard his story and believed in what he was doing. But let me see if I can play this real quick.
It is very difficult to obtain permission to treat patients in the United States.
We've been fighting this battle for way too many years.
Felt this treatment. Time.
I remember sitting on her lap, looking up at her, wondering why she was crying. I was obviously just a kid.
I think this country has the finest bureaucratic regulations in the world, and the other countries are way behind.
Cancer is a major business in the country. If you have ideas that might in one way or another jeopardize that economic base, that you fall into disfavor very quickly.
You're suggesting
that there may even be a conspiracy against cure in a country that has declared war on cancer.
Without doubt.
what people go through with cancer. And since 1967, you've been saying, I can take care of that. And people are going, forget it. Don't pay any attention. Are we that backward, doctor?
Yes.
Well, it's a.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was told I had a fatal cancer and that they would treat me for a while with chemo and radiation, but eventually I would die of the disease.
Did you die from the disease?
No, I'm here today and I'm healthy and happy and so grateful to Dr. Brzezinski.
Dr. Brzezinski saved my life.
Do you believe you would be alive without Dr. Brzezinski?
I know I would not.
And 60 days later, we did another X-ray. Oh, nothing. And you know what he discussed it with us. It just made perfect sense that if you're not working for the FDA or the drug companies, there's a way to cure cancer.
For some reason, they don't want to have cure of cancer.
I'm 25 years old at the end of the month, and there's been a cure for cancer that long. Plain and simple.
Yeah, so that's and the thing is, remember Massimo, the Italian filmmaker who did
Yeah.
well, he also one of his first documentaries I ever ran into wasn't even his 9/11 one. It was the Forbidden Cancer Cures documentary. And it kind of blew my mind because I'm like, there's all these, like, it told all these stories of individual doctors, and it would start from beginning to end of like, okay, there was this doctor, he found this treatment, he was having success, he was curing people in the community, and it was like same story over and over again. Eventually, like, he gets shut down, he gets criticized, he gets murdered, whatever it may be, but the bad thing happens afterwards. And what was crazy is I would look up these doctors, like after watching a documentary, I would like write them down. I'm like, okay, that guy seems interesting. I'm like, let me look him up. And I'm like, oh my God, they existed. They were a real person. There was people who say that they, were cured of this guy. And there's these stories, you can find the stories, the individual stories of these doctors and their treatments. And remember Nipsey Tuck, what the hell was his name? The Hustle, Nipsey
Hussle.
Yeah, remember he. So do you remember his?
He was talking some madness, and they whacked him, huh?
Well, he was talking about the doctor. Oh my God, Dr. Sib. I'm so bad with names. Not Dr. Sibby, whatever his name was.
Yeah.
Who like kind of a skinny black, right? I believe he was black doctor.
Yeah.
And he went to court. And he was sued and went to court. He either was sued or the government brought him to court or whatever. And he proved in court that he was curing people. Like, proved it in court. Like, they couldn't like, discredit him afterwards. He literally proved in court that he was curing these diseases. And the rapper Nipsey Hussle, I'm so bad. I should really know these names before I don't even like think about them in my head before I say it out loud. I literally just go right to jumping into it and saying it out loud.
That's a good idea.
It's just a real awful idea. And it's and so he ends up being so moved by the story. He's like, this guy legitimately proved in court that he was curing these people. Like, they tried to discredit him and they couldn't because he proved it. And he's like, I got to do a documentary on this guy. And then that's when he had the mysterious death. And I'm sure you remember way before COVID when they had that just onslaught of natural doctors, natural remedy doctors, alternative medicine doctors, all having very suspicious deaths and suicides and all this stuff. So it's not new, Kary Mullis, 2019, right before COVID, the guy who you can go back and listen to the Dr. Peter Duesberg episode of Joe Rogan, episode 282, talking about how Kary Mullis does not get along with Dr. Fauci and how Dr. Fauci is lying about, AIDS and HIV and all this stuff. This is episode 282 of Rogan. This is way before anybody knew who Kary Mullis was, at least like in the, in our world. And I didn't even know who he was. And I remember listening to that episode. I'm like, oh, name sounds, familiar, but I'm not sure who he is. And then he brought up Dr. Fauci, and he had a mysterious death right before COVID. So somebody who would be very outspoken, who's been outspoken against Fauci, who, next thing you know, becomes a household name and a celebrity. And so it's just, again, it's all about control. Since the beginning of time, it's always about control. And, the PBD podcast, he did a podcast with Dr. Stephen Greer. I don't know if you saw that one recently, but he it probably like a month ago or something like that. But he watched The Lost Century, and they talked about the bill or act or whatever it's called, the Inventors Something Act, that blew Patrick Bet-David's mind, because he's a entrepreneur. He's all about free market. He's about capitalism. He's about, the best ideas winning and going forward and whatnot. And I forget what the act was called. Again, I shouldn't be saying this stuff out loud without really thinking it through, but I'm just going with it. But the act was about the fact that there's a actual, law that they can suppress and hide technology that will ruin or affect established industries in a negative manner. So in other words, and Patrick Bet-David, because he seems like somebody who went from normal life to all of a sudden become a QAnon, all of a sudden he's like, oh my God, pedophiles everywhere. He's he seems like the type of person who his mind's constantly being blown to all this. And I'm just like, why are you surprised? You uncovered this, you didn't think this was possible. But he's like, I cannot believe that the government, that it's in writing that the government has the right to suppress technology and, even patents. So if you patent something, and if that your patent could negatively affect the industry and the government thinks it should be suppressed, they can suppress it and hide it. And he was like, that's what he opened up. He's like, the Dr. David Greer or Stephen Greer episode with, talking about this law. And he's like, it just blew my mind. He's like, I could not believe that they can do that. And it's like, the government's trying to control everything.
Don't ever, if you've got free energy technology or something like that, don't ever go to the patent office with it. That's where they get you.
The water guy, I believe it was the inventor Mayers, whatever his name is, the guy who made the water-powered car. I believe he patented his technology, but used the wrong numbers or the wrong mathematics. He changed something so people couldn't figure it out and recreate it. And I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of clever. But but I remember when we had David Zed on, and some people were like, oh, there's no way he knows all this about all this stuff, right? And this is possible. And I'm just like, if you looked into 0 point energy and you look at a lot of these inventors, it doesn't seem that difficult, actually. I remember when I had the automotive engineer from Pump on my show, they talked about how with just a handful of modifications and less than $100, you can get a diesel powered engine to run off vegetable oil and and any type of oil you want, basically any natural oil. And you're thinking, wait, so I could actually get oil from McDonald's that they throw out and run my diesel engine, off that with just a few modifications. It sounds insane because we're told this stuff is too complex for us to understand. And if it's no different than the cure for cancer, right? If there was a cure, we would know. And it's same thing. If there was a more efficient engine that, that could run more miles per gallon, then we would know. Somebody would have designed it, engineered it, created it, patented it, and put it out already. But then you look into it, and there's tons of guys who have, there's that story of the guy who modified a carburetor engine to get 200 miles per gallon. And then he had a whole event where they drained the gas tank, only put in a gallon of fuel, and a reporter or journalist watched him as he drove 100 miles off that 1 gallon. And that guy was another guy who was met by Men in Black or whoever and said, hey, make this go away. You know, don't ever do this again. And that's kind of the world we live in. But again, like, why wouldn't all industries be controlled to some extent? And, or to, you know, in all extents, really. I mean, the media is controlled, the technology is controlled, free speech is controlled, like medicine's controlled, like what our health is controlled. We were told to eat grains and pastas to stay healthy with the food pyramid. You know, we have Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who's on my show. He was actually recommended to me by Dr. Dominic D'Agostino when he was on the keto guy. And Dr. Thomas Seyfried at Boston University, I think he was at Boston University, but he has like 150 peer-reviewed studies about how cancer can be treated or starved or, you know, with dietary methods that basically you can starve or kill cancer cells with the ketogenic diet, because glucose is the energy source for cancer. And if you starve yourself of glucose, you starve the cancer cells. And also how all these benefits in fasting and treating cancer, even if you do the typical cancer treatments of chemo and radiation, if you do the ketogenic diet or you do these dietary therapies like fasting, then it actually increases your ability to kill the cancer and deal with the treatments. So it's like he's like, and nobody's interested in any of this research. Nobody cares. Nobody. And he's like, because there's no pill for it. You know, there's no. It's insane. The ketogenic diet is fascinating because when I had Jim Abrams on from who did the Naked Gun movies, which is it was a great opportunity to have him on, because I mean, I'm just a huge fan of the Naked Gun movies. It was some of my favorite movies growing up. But when I had him on, it gave me a reason to talk to him when I found out about his son's story. And he had a son, you know, the story where he had like really violent seizures, and then he you know, was going to all these doctors. Nobody could cure him of these things. And he found out that John Hopkins in I think the early 70s basically abandoned this research that was showing that they were curing kids of these seizures with the ketogenic diet. And they abandoned this research because they started looking into pharmaceutical ways of treating these seizures. And he found, you know, this literature in these books in this library, and then cured his kid of these seizures using the ketogenic diet. It's named a foundation called the Charlie Foundation after his son to basically look into dietary methods of curing disease and treating diseases. And so, but that's the thing, like all these things are controlled. It's not that this information doesn't exist or it's not out there. It just they, for lack of a better term, don't want you to know it exists.
Yeah, well, Johns Hopkins Medical Center University, it's essentially the Rockefellers hospital. It's their university. I mean, it doesn't say Rockefeller across it, but that was their guys that started it, their guys installed it, their money that financed it. So yeah, if they've developed a cure for something that is going to cost next to nothing and cannibalize their profits from their pharmaceuticals, which the Rockefellers invented, then yeah, they'll suppress it. Especially, I mean, you would make the assumption that Johns Hopkins would be there to dig into all of these new possible innovations and medical improvements and scientific breakthroughs in order to then take that and allow the public to benefit from it. But in fact, what they do is they take that so that they can suppress it, so that nobody will ever see it again. Because that's what the Rockefeller mentality is to, you know, create the disease and sell them the cure.
Problem, reaction, solution, right? It's literally how they deal with everything. It's insane. So we've talked about it. I don't know how much time you have. I know you got a lot going. There's been a lot of debate on the Union of the Unwanted about, is Trump in on it? What's going on? Is he a patsy, a possible patsy, or was he a what is he? Is he a martyr? Is he none of the above? Is he, but the timeline to me, so let me just give you my 2 cents. I tend to believe when you look at the timeline, right? When you look at the fact that, one, if Trump was in on it, why not wait closer to the election? 2, why would you do it right after you just humiliated, everybody who said Biden was fine and cognitively there or whatever? But I also think that there's some mystery to if they sent him out there to fail on purpose. But either way, Trump was like on top of the world, right? He seemed like the only possible future president who's running who cognitively could handle the job. So he was on top of the world. Biden is on a sinking ship. Then they try to assassinate him, allegedly, of course, just to keep all my conspiratorial, skeptical people happy out there.
Options open, yeah.
And they try to assassinate him. Then Biden magically has COVID. Nobody sees him, right? It's a great way of like not doing any PR. Like if he wasn't in on it, I feel like maybe your first reaction would be, hey, let me go out there and just say, hey, this should not happen, because that could have been me. That could be any of my loved ones or friends that I work with, politicians, whatever, that are disliked. But instead, he magically has COVID, even though he's been vaccinated about 1 billion times. He has COVID and apparently can't zoom in his opinions on what happened. So he's hidden. And then all of a sudden, Harris, takes the lead, which really Democrats should be pissed about, because they had no say in who's going to represent their party.
Yeah, but she's stunning and brave, and everybody loves her, don't you know?
Well,
So
and
she'll
that's
be
the other
fine.
thing. She was disliked. She was one of the most disliked people ever. And then all of a sudden, and this is how much like a illusion can become reality if you repeat it enough and you keep saying it, then people just believe it. It's like that experiment. I've heard Candace Owens talk about this too, who, by the way, has become like one of my favorite people ever, because she's like the female Alex Jones in regards to willing to entertain any conspiracy, and really is open-minded to a lot of stuff that I didn't think she'd be open-minded to. I never saw her really as like somebody who was going to question 9/11 or question the first lady of France being a man, which, by the way, I have no doubt in my mind she is. There no like the journal. I'm so off topic, but I'll get back to that, because that is a fascinating story, but not hard to believe, because
No.
Macron was a Bilderberg guy who like was a banker or something like that. Like he had no opportunity of becoming the French president, and then went to like a Bilderberg. It's like a lot of these Bilderberg meetings. Like you get like somebody like a governor like Clinton. He goes to a Bilderberg meeting, and then all of a sudden he decides to run soon after, like right after the Bilderberg meeting. Like and Macron has a very similar story. But yeah, so Harris was super disliked, and all of a sudden they say she's going to run because I guess she's the best, she's the least of all evils, and that they think that she's the best option of what's left, and she'll play ball, right? I'm sure a lot of people in the cabinet are like, well, she's going to keep our jobs, because if we get a new person in here, we might get new people working here, and so let's keep our jobs. If she's in here, she'll keep a lot of similar people surrounding her. But they just keep repeating that all the polls say she's likable. All the polls say she's likable. Everybody thinks she's likable. Everybody thinks and I don't know anybody whose opinion has changed about her since she decided to run, but apparently we're being told that everybody's opinion has changed since she decided to run, and she went from unlikable to likable. She went from Indian to black woman, and she, like, everything about her has changed. And yet I get people coming up to me saying, can you believe how liked she is? I'm like, by who? Do you know anybody close to you whose opinion has changed since she's decided to run? Like, no, they just keep telling you that opinions have changed, and polls are saying this and polls are saying that, and now they're convincing people that she has a chance to win just because they're telling you she has a chance to win. And it's like it shows how dumb and easy it is to manipulate the public.
I have no respect for the general public. If you think Kamala Harris is a good choice, then I'd love to see your work. Show me your work on that one. Based on what? On her policies? What are her policies? She hasn't announced her policies. What are her ideas? Her ideas are so non-existent that she hasn't even put them forward. There's 3 or 4 different places on her website where you can donate money to her because she's a grifter. But if you want to see what she's going to do in the future as a president of the United States, so far, the only thing I can see is that she's running on a policy of I'm not Donald Trump. And that's just not good enough. That's just not going to do it. Because guess what? Everybody else isn't Donald Trump too. So you're not special. You're a 0 delegate getting diversity hire imposter who should never be anywhere near any of the jobs you've ever had. She had a 92% turnover in her office in the first 3.5 years as the vice president, triple what the previous high was for any administration, tripled. So she's staggeringly stupid, criminally incompetent. And if you think that she is the best candidate to become the president of the United States, I just am curious to know on what criteria are you basing that on? Because she's failed her way up in every position she's been in, starting in San Francisco and lieutenant governor, all that shit. She or district attorney or state attorney, she's been abysmal. And everywhere she's gone, whether it was California, where they've had to throw out thousands of cases because her crime lab was taking the cocaine home and doing it instead of testing it for fingerprints and things like that. She had to let thousands of people out of prison that she falsely prosecuted, falsely convicted, then kept in prison on extended, even after she was required to let them go. She still kept them in prison so she could pay them $1 a day to fight California wildfires. I mean, that's a psychotic thing to do. She's now running for president. Her vice president is provably lying about his service, which is like, for whatever reason, these fucking retards can never get it through their heads. Don't lie about your service. You can lie about anything else, but just don't lie about that. If you lie about that, they're going to catch you because they're definitely looking for it. And you're going to look stupid and radioactive. What does Tim Walz do? Walked right into that trap. But also that's because the Kamala team is running. They're running for, as far as I'm concerned, Kamala Harris is running for student council president of the United States. That's what it seems like to me. I fully expect her to be cutting, like having a bunch of people in the break room with paintbrushes and construction paper painting "Vote for Kamala" all over it, like as a campaign strategy. I feel like I'm watching End of Empire shit. You know what I mean? Like where you're embarrassed on their behalf because they don't have the ability for self-reflection to recognize that they should be embarrassed for what they're trying to do. And yet here they are. It's like Dunning-Kruger in real life. They're too dumb to know that they're dumb. It's really something. And part of me feels like America gets what it deserves with this. Like if you've got to the point where the choice is between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, you've already lost. That's a losing proposition no matter how you slice it.
Well, so I'd like your opinion on the Trump assassination or attempted assassination. Like, do you think it is just theater? Do you think it is some October surprise in, way too soon? Do you think it's like, I mean, when you look at like everything they attempted to do, from obviously blaming COVID on them to trying to lock him up for all this ridiculous, corruption lawsuits and all this stuff, and just, I mean, just the ongoing censoring him on every single
Everything.
social media platform.
Lawfare.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I get it. Like, there's people on the Union Don't Want that are like, he's not he's not your savior. He's not this. I'm like, I get it. And
He's
I know,
not, yeah, but still,
I-
they're still plotting against him, obviously.
which makes me like him more. Like, it only makes me like him more. The more they hate him, the more. And the other thing, so if you look at the timeline, like, it's frustrating because people in our community are just like, I get it. You want to believe they're all the same, every single one of them. I'm not saying that Trump is different in regards to, like, he's going to be the guy who saves us and he doesn't have any of the same flaws that the other ones have. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he has less flaws than the other ones, and he's probably a little bit more honest and less corrupt than the other ones. And if that wasn't true, he wouldn't have brought up vaccines when he ran for president the first time. He wouldn't have, had a meeting with Robert Kennedy Jr., Del Bigtree, and a Dr. Fauci and all these people about vaccines. He wouldn't have questioned 9/11. He wouldn't have brought up the JFK, documents, trying to release that. He wouldn't call out the UN the way he did. He wouldn't, he wouldn't tell everybody when basically they were trying to suppress every alternative medicine there was in the world, that he took hydroxychloroquine, when he, for no reason, just going on TV, knowing that he was going to cut into the profits of vaccines or whatever. If people said, hey, if it's good enough for the president, it's good enough for me, maybe I don't need the vaccine. Like, he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have, they wouldn't have tried so hard to lock him up. There's been no other president in the past that's ever been censored. I mean, he left office and they literally removed him from every single platform ever. He was taken off the WWE, Hall of Fame, on the website. They removed him from the Hall of Fame. They removed his name from, like, participants or wrestlers or whatever. I'm like, why would you go to that extreme? It's almost like Russia, right? Like, you remove Russia from
The Olympics.
from the Olympics, from the World Cup, from all the stuff. Like, if you try that hard to paint them the boogeyman, maybe I should reconsider if they're really the boogeyman. And that's kind of like what I feel about Trump. Now, those are my 2 cents. How do you feel?
He's running a rival crime family. He can be their enemy and also not a good guy. Nobody's saying there's some people that are like, he's coming to save us. I don't think he's coming to save us. I think he's running a different faction. And he's in his in areas of interest are not aligned with the globalist areas of interest on everything. Now, there's some overlap. I did this episode on talking about called the Conservatives Letter to Santa, talking about Project 2025 from the Heritage Foundation. They're like, oh, this is Trump's platform. You look at all these things he wants. It's like, no, this is the Heritage Foundation's platform. It's their Christmas list that they sent over to him. These are all the things that they want him to do. And it's like, half of them are things that he's going to do anyway. So, but the other half are things that they would like him to do that he's not, maybe he's interested in doing it. Maybe he's not. Maybe that's part of a negotiation. Maybe he doesn't give a shit. But, I see him as a threat to a lot of these grifts out there, because it reminds me of the comment that Newt Gingrich made about Trump when he had already won the election in 2016, but he hadn't been inaugurated yet. And he said that Donald Trump was going to have a hard time in Washington, D.C. He's not a part of the group. He's not a part of the secret societies, and when you're Newt Gingrich and you're a member of the Knights of Malta, maybe that's what he's talking about, right? And so Trump does have problems because he's not a part of all of those secret societies. He's a part of another faction that's doing other stuff. So part of this is that there's a fear of an outsider. I know people go, whoa, Trump's not really an outsider. No, he's been in the East Coast politics and business for a long, long time, and he knows all these people. I don't mean it an outsider in that sense. I mean an outsider in the sense that Newt Gingrich was talking about, not a part of the secret societies. If you're a part of the secret societies, they know how to control you. They've got the goods on you somehow. If you're not, then you may be an impediment to them in the future. You might not be, but in Trump's case, he's just a huge bull in a china shop, right? He starts talking about, you know, money laundering in Ukraine and stuff like that, and all of a sudden they just can't have that. So I think that you can be in a situation where this group views Trump as a threat to their existing grift, which includes Ukraine, you know, and whatever laundromat's going on there, bioweapons, crypto, washing machines that they've got set up, all the things that these leftist criminals are doing there. He represents pulling a plug to that, and all of their money looting that's no doubt winding up in the Cayman Islands. And so, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend in this situation. That's probably how you're feeling too. It's like these people legitimately hate Donald Trump, and I can't stand these people. So I kind of like that he makes them crazy. You know, it's the same thing when you people are like, oh, who do you want to win the election? I want the person to win the election that's going to make those leftists scream into the sky again and break their brains. I would love to see that, because they deserve that after what they've done the last 4 years. Does that mean I'm a Trump supporter? Absolutely not. I just want to see my enemies suffer. And I consider those leftists that are, you know, talking about gender equality and everybody's stunning and brave. Those people are destroying the country. And so if they are triggered, putting it mildly, by Donald Trump, then I hope they get more Donald Trump than they could possibly handle, because they're fragile, weak lunatics that deserve to be finished off and broken. If they have to think about Donald Trump for 4 years, it's going to break their brain. And I know that because if I sit down and envision a scenario in which Kamala Harris is the president for 4 years, it would break my brain too. You know what I mean? And that's something that we have to honestly think about, Ricky, because if you want to talk about Yuri Bezmenov's stages of demoralization, could you imagine a scenario in which we wake up the day after the totally real, not rigged election selection process, and Kamala Harris has glided into this, still not announcing a policy, still being deeply unpopular, and then manages to get 82 million votes and wins in a totally rigged election? Now what? Now what do you do? What do you do in that situation where you go, okay, the mask is totally off. They don't even care if we know that they're rigging this anymore. You know, like that could happen. That's a very real possibility.
Without a doubt. But the thing is that drives me nuts is when people say that he is slightly different than everybody else. They're like, no, he's not. He's the same. And it's like, well, have you ever, all the things he's been through, like, can you remember any president that's been through a quarter of the things he's been through?
No.
Like, just, and people also forget, if he was just one of them, why do they all hate him so much when he decided to run? Like, when
that's the point.
But even his team, like his team wasn't even on his team. And like they didn't want him to run. It was almost like, okay, now we got to jump on this train because it's not slowing down. Like, we got to jump on the Trump train because he's so popular and people want him so much to represent our party or whatever, that you couldn't help but, you know, think like, hey, if I want a job, I better get on his good side. So then everybody started talking positively about him. But prior to that, everybody in the Republican Party hated him, and they said that he was a goof and he was an idiot and he was this, he was that. And I also think that's why he's easily taken advantage of, because like you said, he's been in real estate, he's been in construction, he's been in Hollywood in regards to like movies and TV and whatnot. he hasn't been in Washington D.C. He hasn't made all those friends and circles and hasn't networked there. So when he went to the White House and all of a sudden they're like, hey, hire this guy's good at this, or they hire that guy, he's taking a lot of people's word for it because
Yeah.
he doesn't know these people's history and he's not in those circles. So, and I'm not making excuses for him.
No, exactly. It's his fault.
Yeah. But
He's
I know
responsible for
some
that.
people are like, oh, if he was if he wasn't one of them, why would he hire that guy? Why would he hire? And that's some of the reasoning I've heard has been that exactly. Like, hey, if I get a new job being president of, some bank or whatever, or and I don't know who to hire, like who's really good at managing this, and I get a recommendation because somebody who's been in the banking industry their whole lives are like, hey, this guy's a great manager. You want a teller manager? This is your guy. Like, hire him. I'm like, okay, yeah, I trust you. You've been in this world for a long time, and that's so I can imagine that scenario being reality and what possibly was going on. Like I said, most of us have seen him on TV in real estate, and he hasn't been in politics. Like, yeah, he dibble dabbled a little bit in it because it probably helped him in his real estate and construction world, because obviously they're the ones who are going to have the laws and create the speed bumps that you have to deal with to build a new building or buy a new property or whatever. So I get that aspect of it, but I also can see him being like, hey, I'm just going to take these people's word for it, because the people who are hanging out at K Street and going to the bars and going golfing and hanging out at these really nice restaurants, who are networking, like that's their inner circle, and you haven't been there. You haven't built these relationships or whatnot. So I know Kevin Spacey is a piece of crap, but I remember when House of Cards came out and they asked him about where they were getting their inspiration for the storylines, and they were saying how they were talking to people that they weren't sharing who it was and their names or anything, but they were talking to people who actually worked in politics, people who grew up in Washington, grew up in these circles, and that's what inspired the storylines. And they're like, well, how realistic is it, what you guys put out there in the series compared to their personal stories? And they're like, how quickly we passed a education bill was unrealistic. Everything else was pretty close to what, the stories that were being shared with us, and reflected, that world. So it's, to me, I'm like, I'm not surprised at all hearing that. I'm like, yeah, there's people sleeping with each other. There's people backstabbing each other. There's mysterious murders and deaths that everybody kind of knows. Like, yeah, he talked too much, and they had to shut him up. Like, that stuff happens.
Yeah, but there's also no mystery to John Bolton. You know who John Bolton is. I mean, for Donald Trump to go in there and say, "Oh, I'm going to bring in John Bolton," it's like, if I know that that's a disaster, it's a disaster. So again, he brought a lot of this on himself. He surrounded himself with shitty people. He needs to. I mean, first of all, he needs to dump everybody in his inner circle. He needs to dump Jared Kushner and these people, these Zionist faction, which he won't, but he should. He needs to dump the Secret Service entirely. Wouldn't trust them. There was a palace coup. You know what I mean? It just, to be on the safe side, everybody gets fired.
But who do you put in? Like, pretend like
you bring in your own private SS, essentially. That's what you do. I mean, you just go, I don't trust you people. Why would you? Why would you trust anything that has any sort of connection to the Justice Department? The Justice Department is a criminal enterprise operating inside the United States of America. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is the largest domestic terrorist organization operating inside America. If Donald Trump doesn't put the heads of those organizations all in handcuffs, he's asking for it. He's opening himself up. When kings get regime changed, when a regime change fails on a king, everybody dies. You know what I mean? If Donald Trump was serious about this, maybe not that physically everybody dying, but everybody would be fired. Nobody would be trusted. I would trust 0 people. They walked him out into a shooting gallery. I am not of the belief that yes, I understand that he is a World Wrestling Federation Hall of Famer and would know how to do it. I am not of the belief that they instructed somebody to nick his ear. And I don't have any energy one way or the other necessarily. I'm not heavily committed to this stance. I'm Occam's razor on this one. I think they tried to kill him and they missed. I think they allowed some brain dead guy out there to take a shot at him and maybe some additional shooters, but something happened and they weren't successful. I don't know why they weren't successful, because because you can't be wrong on this, right? You can't miss the Kennedy shot, right?
Yeah, you have to have multiple shooters, but the end,
And yet they did. So
that's
did they mean to? I mean, I'm open to it.
that's the only part that makes me a little skeptical about the official story, is the fact that, like, how did you fuck it up? But
I know. I mean, that's why I'm having problems with. That's why I'm saying I'm not enthusiastically on a side yet, because I'm still trying to sort this out. Because
do you think they wanted to scare him to maybe, like, not run? Maybe they're like, hey, like, that's how close we got, because that's the only explanation I could.
maybe
I
don't
you know, like that, because the kid obviously didn't. I feel like there's no evidence he's even a good shot, and his cell phone that went, that they couldn't get into, all the other, gunshots that people heard. They heard multiple weapons. They heard weapons that sounded different than his gun. How quickly he shot seemed, unrealistic for somebody with the lack of talent that he had. The fact that, all the things, like, the Secret Service didn't show up to the briefing. So, like, in the morning, the Secret Service and the local police gathered to talk about the event. The Secret Service didn't show up that morning.
That's my point. Quick question, everybody. Why didn't you show up? Oh, by the way, you're all fired. And your boss is fired too. I'm not interested in excuses for this. You were supposed to be here. Nobody showed up. Obviously, if nobody showed up, somebody told them not to show up. Everybody's got to go.
Well, and what's crazy, so they were talking about the head of Secret Service, the woman, whatever her name was, that when she was testifying, and somebody was talking about how when a mobster is protected, right, and they're in court, they have this arrogance to them. Like, you could have all the charges going against you. You could have you should be nervous because you're like, I'm fucked according to what they're saying. And there's no nervousness. And it's because everybody knows you're protected, or you're protected. And they were saying how she had the same demeanor, where it was like, they're literally highlighting all the things that should get you fired and in trouble. They're highlighting about, how could you do this? How could you do that? How could there be videos of people telling police and Secret Service agents there's somebody on the roof and nobody does anything? How can it be 9 days later and you still have zero information about this event? All these things. And instead of her being like, shit, like, I'm going to lose my fucking job, she just calmly, like, just sat there, and she knew she was protected. She was the scapegoat. She was just going out there to be the punching bag. Somebody told her, like, hey, don't worry about, anything. We'll take care of you. Just go out there and just take these questions as best as you can. Don't worry about it. It's kind of like when Dr. Fauci goes and he gets manhandled by Rand Paul. Like, everybody knows that, like, he exposes the lies and whatnot, but it doesn't matter what he exposes because he's taken care of. He's protected. Yeah. And it's and only somebody like Dr. Fauci or this woman who is protected could go out there publicly, be exposed for all your mistakes and lies and whatnot, and yet not be worried at all. I mean, we've been in meetings, right? But work meetings where you're like, oh, I fucked up. And you have that feeling of like, yeah, I did kind of fuck up. Oh shit. And there was none of that. Like, no matter, and these were giant fuck ups, and there was no look on their face of like, I'm concerned that I messed up, or even guilt, like a little bit of guilt that like, oops, my fuck up almost led to a assassination of a democratically elected president. A, you know, it just
we make the assumption that the mission was to keep him alive, right? For all we know, I mean, she's acting that way because maybe her instructions were stand down. And so in actuality, she knows that she accomplished her goal. I mean, you don't get to be surrounded by Dick Cheney on 9/11 down in the Peoc without being trusted. And
Well-
you're not trusted without proving yourself in some way. So,
Well, you're making a really valid point because think about it. Trump was president. He probably got exposed, you know, those secrets that you only get to know when you become president. You get to know, like, you know, they give you information that you know you can't go public with or whatever. So he knows the inner workings of a lot of things, and he knows how deep the rabbit hole goes. So it almost makes sense that a almost assassination was the plan to scare him because he knows all the capabilities of the government and the CIA and all this stuff. I mean, he's probably seen some I believe, like I'm hearing somebody say that he's briefly like highlighted some of the JFK stuff that he can't share with the public. And he said like, hey, if you knew what I knew, you would understand why I can't, you know, declassify these documents. So it's like, he might know how corrupt and how bad the CIA really is and the government and all like the horrible things that they've been behind. So maybe that's all it would take. You get some amazing sniper to be like, let's just, you know, just get him a little bit. Don't kill him. Just get him a little bit. Let him know that we're done fucking around. And next time we shoot to kill, we're not going to miss. And just see if we can scare him. Instead, he puts his fists up like Malcolm X and fucking screams fight, which is like one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was absolutely, I'm putting myself in that situation where I'm like, if I honestly thought I was getting assassinated or somebody was attempting to assassinate me, like, I'm not sure my first reaction would be put my fists up and scream fight, which is also, I guess you can, and this conspiratorial part of my mind is like, either he's that dumb where he's like, if people are shooting at you, maybe you shouldn't be popping your head up. It's, you know, pumping your fist.
or
You're in on it. Yeah.
you're in on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, heads they win, tails you lose, right? So if they get him in the head, he's dead and mission accomplished. If they miss, message sent. You know, some kid gets whacked on a roof, big deal. And it sends the message that we will blow you up at some point. We might have missed you here, but we'll get you eventually. You know, the only way you can be an effective president is if you go into your 4-year term with a ticking time bomb inside your body, like some terminal disease where you just go, you know what? You can't do anything to me. Maybe you can get my family, but as far as me, there's a suicide mission. One way in, right? Just go in there and and the Federal Reserve, all the things that'll get you killed, and the Federal Reserve, blow the whistle on the pharmaceutical industry, lock up everybody in the Department of Justice and the FBI. Do all those things immediately on the first day.
I mean, he's just to think about the paranoia of, and again, maybe that's why Trump was so different than all past presidents, is that he's so arrogant and cocky that he thinks he can beat anybody, that even when he almost gets assassinated, he's like, his reaction isn't like, hey, like, they're gonna fucking kill me, but it's more like, they can't kill me. I'm like, you know, it's like, it's just because when you look at everything he's been through, he's loaded. He has money, he has property, he has a beautiful wife, and probably many other people's wives that he's sleeping with. So he's getting laid. So it's like, why would you put yourself through this if somewhere deep inside you didn't care about the country to some extent? Like, I wonder if he did an interview, and I can't remember who it was recently, where the interview ended and they're taking off their mics, right? They got the shirt mics and they're taking them off, and he's standing up, and whoever was interviewing him goes, he's like, like, thank you so much for the time, and it was like a little bit of a snippet right before they turn off the camera, and it might have been Tim Pool, and he's like, he said something, and then Trump goes, and he's already up, and you can only hear like a little bit of the microphone picking up their personal conversation, and he goes something along the lines of like, yeah, and he's like, and if I don't win, we won't have a country left, and he says something like that, and it was like, not during the interview, it was after the interview. It was like a little snippet that you overheard right before they stopped the video, and I'm like, I was curious. I'm like, is that truly how he believes? I'm like, is he a true believer that he needs this? And then I thought about, I'm like, but you almost would have to be, because they've tried everything. They've attempted to lock you up. They've erased you from every social media platform. If you Google the assassination attempt, they won't even let people find the video anymore. And yet, like, you're still willing to keep fighting. What are you fighting for? Because it's not money and resources and fame. You already have those things. So could it be that you truly believe that, like, you are capable of preventing this ship from sinking?
Maybe, or maybe it's just petty revenge, whatever. But I mean, there's part of, there's the revenge fantasy component of this that I think is very appealing to a lot of people after what they've watched for the last 3.5 years, really even before that, what they did to him while he was president. And I'm no Trump fan, but even, even I was like, what they did, the way they sort of targeted him and double standarded him and lawfared him and did all this stuff. So, I mean, it was so over the top. Even people that are sort of ambivalent of Trump were like, they really stacked the deck against him and went after him for some real dumb shit in the legal standpoint, in terms of like the property component of Mar-a-Lago, and when they were talking about the valuations of things like that. I mean, I've spent 25 years in real estate. I mean, their appraisal list of what they tagged Mar-a-Lago at $20 million. Like, if that's the case, I'll take 24 of them. You know what I mean? Like, it's embarrassing. So, what they've done? They've done something that I never thought could be done over the last, I don't know, let's just call it 7.5 years, starting with the Russia collusion stuff and all that, and the Hunter Biden laptop was fake, and then the lawfare, and they've turned Donald Trump into a victim, which is quite impressive. For somebody that's never played that, I mean, he's now a sympathetic character, because even the normies are like, what they're doing to him is wrong. So, the idea of him coming back into office and righting those wrongs or getting revenge against those people, I mean, the reason why that's appealing to a sizable component of the population is because we all know those people deserve it. They have it coming to them. And there's a large segment of the population that would like to see them get it from Donald Trump or whoever, just somebody, the Adam Schiffs and Hillary Clintons of the world, the John Podestas. These people need to be incarcerated for their crimes, right? So there's a lot of people that would like to see Donald Trump go scorched earth, to come in and say, I don't have to worry about re-election. They tried to kill me. They tried to steal all my money. They tried to put me in a cage. I've got 4 years. You should have killed me when you had a chance. You should have finished me off. I could see him doing that. I could see him being the type of guy who is just so determined that he just puts everything else off to the side and goes and hunts these people down. They would deserve it, of course. But again, it all feels very Q-esque, right? Like hope porn, where you're like, yeah, he's gonna round him up and send him to Guantanamo Bay. Well, he could have done that the last time around. Did that happen? No, didn't. He went from lock her up to, oh, the Clintons aren't bad people. What? You can't. So the question is, if he becomes president again, is this time different? I don't know. We'll see.
He's I know we'll start wrapping up, but maybe something we'll do after we wrap it up is check out his interview, because today, I don't know if you heard, but him and Elon Musk were doing an interview today live on X, because Trump is back on X, and he's interviewing right now Mr. Beast, who also is allegedly linked to some really interesting stuff. But yeah, all your heroes are sickos. So just
Yeah.
for that.
Sickos, controlled opposition. But that being said, none of these candidates is going to come in and do everything that you want done, right? You almost have to just hope that you get lucky and that your desires happen to align with the desires of a Donald Trump or a Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or whoever, because they're certainly not going to do anything to make you happy. But if you happen to want something that they also want, then you could be in a good spot here. I don't know what you would want that Kamala Harris is offering, but if in the event that you wanted it, that's the only way you're going to get what you want, is if it just happens to luckily align with what they want.
This idea of Trump questioning all mandates on vaccines in regards to like going back to school and all that stuff. I actually just got emailed. I get it every year from my school or my kid's school nurse about like, hey, can you get updated religious exemption form for vaccines? I turn it in every year or whatever. But there's a lot of parents that don't know that that even exists or that's even valid, and they just shoot up their kids with whatever the pediatrician tells them to shoot them up with so they can go back to school. I mean, the fact that he's willing to question that, the fact that last time he was in power, he pushed back against Big Pharma a little bit with the hydroxychloroquine talk, because he, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, Operation Warp Speed, this and that. He has a huge ego, and I think he's also, he's like, I think he was told, he doesn't look like he's some health or nutrition expert. I mean, he doesn't look like he does CrossFit, so I'm like, he was probably told that like, hey, this is our best bet to, curing people. But he at least also, I mean, I will say that when he admitted that he was on hydroxychloroquine publicly, when people forget, like at that time, any doctor that was talking about it, recommending it, even suggesting it, the little bit was getting censored. And he just came out and said, hey, that's what they gave me. And, which really put a damper in pharma, because you figure, okay, now people listen to him and they do the same thing. They'll think that the vaccine's not necessary, and we could possibly affect our ability to have emergency authorization, because there'd be another alternative to treat this disease. So, that to me was slightly different than anything I've ever seen any other president do. I don't think the mandates for masks or vaccines or any of that stuff would have happened under Trump to that extent. I mean, people forget that he was getting a lot of pushback because he kept saying he was going to open up the country much sooner than everybody wanted it open. They kept saying like, oh, he's not taking this seriously enough. People are going to die, and all he cares about is opening the country and looking good or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think there's and the Fauci thing is a perfect example of maybe some of his hires and some of the people that he put in power were just out of ignorance and not, being naive to who they are, because he ended up butting heads with Fauci. And if he actually liked Fauci and was a fan of Fauci, why would he butt heads with him? So it was one of those things where it was unique. Now, I get it. I'm not a fan of voting for the least of two evils, because most of the time they're both typically very incredibly evil. and it's even the least of two evils is still so evil that's not worth voting for. But I think Trump is the exception to that rule. And I know a lot of people in the alternative media community be like, "Oh, he's a Trump fan. He's falling for it." And I'm a fan of groceries not going up 25%. I'm a fan of not going into another world war, and like it or not, during the Trump administration, he got North and South Korea to meet up for the first time in history, and there's zero new wars. So, I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of some of vaccines being questioned, maybe not mandated by our president. I'm a fan of a couple things that I can kind of be like, okay, yeah, I'm for this. I can, so to me, this idea of like, I don't, and this is the problem with the conspiracy world is, and the alternative media world, is that none of the elite can ever do anything good, ever. And like you said, sometimes it just is what it is. Like it's not, some, crazy thing. It's like people on the left, like they called us, conspiracy theorists and all this stuff for the longest time, and now they're saying that Trump was in on it and it was like the greatest hoax ever, the assassination attempt. I'm like, oh, so now you're entertaining conspiracies? Like, and that's kind of like what everybody does, is that they only entertain the conspiracies that help mold their worldview and fits into their worldview and their narrative, right? So it's like, if you're a conspiracy theory or theorist, then Trump, if there's anything good that you could even highlight, it would have to be for some much eviler cause or reason. And it's like, maybe he called out the bad guy because he also thought he was a bad guy. Not to say that he's always right and he's always doing that, but like maybe call a spade a spade. Like it's just maybe that, sometimes it just is what it is. And it's not everything. It's hard because when everything seems like a grand chessboard for greater purposes and causes, it's hard to ever accept anything as what it seems to be.
Right. That it's part of a much bigger play, or somebody else is influencing that decision. I mean, I think when I look at the choice between the Kamala Harris regime and what Trump would be doing, I break it down like this. Kamala Harris and her group is on board with everything that the globalist faction wants to put forward for the next 4 years. And Donald Trump is on board with most of it, but not all of it. And so you ask, like, which one's better? The one that's on board with most of it, but not all of it. Is that a ringing endorsement? Not even close. No, it's just they're a little bit more hesitant. I'm voting for the, monkey wrench. I'm not voting for anyone, but, I'm pulling for the monkey wrench. I want the human monkey wrench. And that could be Kamala Harris. She could be so unpopular and so disconnected and so inauthentic and disingenuous that nobody ever, well, I shouldn't say nobody, because we know there's a percentage that'll believe anything, but maybe she has a really hard time connecting with the general public even more than she already is, and just nothing gets done. That would be a victory. Or Donald Trump gets in there and starts throwing his monkey wrench into things, not because he's a good guy looking to come save the day, but because his grift is different and he wants things done a different way that doesn't benefit these people, but benefits him. Fine. Whatever you can do to stop the DEI side of stuff, the wokeism, the gender nonsense in school, the everybody's got trans parents, I view Trump as being opposed to that, and I view Kamala as being in favor of that. So that's a vote for Trump right there. He doesn't even necessarily get credit for that. He just is opposed to something that's insane. So you win by default on that one. So again, I have low expectations, I should say, very low expectations. But if all Donald Trump can give us as the president is to gum up the operations and slow things down so that we can mount some sort of resistance or just collectively get everybody on board with not participating in the money supply, the money system that they're trying to rig or whatever it is, buy us a little bit more time or throw them off of their schedule, their Agenda 2030 schedule. I mean, we also have to consider the fact that Donald Trump could be allowed to win so that he is saddled with being the president overseeing an economic collapse too, which is most definitely inbound. So, I mean, it's easy. I mean, if that happens with Kamala, you just go, well, she's dumb. And that's why it happened. With Trump, you could go, see, this is what you get when you listen to guys like that and their policies. You get an economic collapse. He comes in here because he only cares about himself and he only cares about tax breaks for the rich and all the stuff that they say. See, what did you get? You got an economic collapse. They'll hang it on him. Won't be his fault entirely, of course, but they'll hang it on him, and it might not be his fault, but it'll be his problem. And that's all the media will talk about, So, even if he wins, he's still going to lose in that regard. They can make things difficult for him. They can slow up the process. And then in the end, they'll just say, the way you tried to give Biden, tell everyone that it was Biden's fault for inflation, which it really wasn't. It was Trump's. He's the one that printed all the money. But they hung it on Biden. It's Biden's problem. Well, they do the same thing with Trump. This time it won't be inflation. It'll be an economic collapse, right? And they'll say, Orange Jesus did it. It's his fault. See, this is why we can't have nice things, because Donald Trump. So they're gonna find a way to blame him for it if he wins, and find a way. They're gonna find a way to blame him for it even if he loses. It's gonna be his fault somehow. No matter, they just haven't figured it out yet. So,
well, the thing is, what stuns me is you can still, like, it's super easy to just compare the last 4 years under Biden administration and then the years under Trump. Like, I've never seen more homeless people. Like, even in cities areas that weren't even a place where I even remember seeing a lot of homeless people are all of a sudden everywhere. I'm seeing more violence. I'm seeing, first of all, I've always been a type of person, like, I grew up an immigrant. We didn't have a lot of money. My mom, all she did was stress about money all the time. And I'm like, once I am an adult, I never want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, like, I'm just going to live within my means, not overspend, not go crazy, and just, like, be able to just kind of do the things I want to do and not stress about it. And this is the first time in my life that I'm, like, going out to eat or going to the grocery store, and I'm turning into my mother where I'm complaining about how expensive everything is.
I know.
And it's like, it's insane. And so it's like when you compare the administrations, I'm like, things are just so horribly worse. When you look at, the Ukraine-Russian war, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I will thank that war for ending COVID, because it seems like it happened right afterwards. Like, it got everybody's attention off COVID. But, so you look at all these things, like the escalation with Russia, all these things that happen. I'm like, if you compare the two, you can't say that a Trump administration wouldn't overall, in general, probably be much better. And then, like, let's complain about Trump when grocery prices go down and, we're not constantly poking the bear with Russia and other countries and whatnot. So it's just, to me, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I almost would rather take that risk of being tricked into believing that he's different and then finding out later that he's not. But it just, he's also one of the few politicians, if not the only politician, that's ever broken the third wall, right? Like, he's almost like Deadpool, right? Like, or like CM Punk in wrestling. It's like, oh, is it a work, or is he bringing up real life? He was willing to talk about real life things while everybody else just played along. When you look at, like, the fake news thing, most politicians knew like this news company is going to try to, you know, get me in a question and get me to look bad, but I play along. I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, you try to give them an answer that doesn't look bad or whatever, and you play along. When did you ever have a president say, "No, you write lies. You're a liar. I'm not answering your
I
question."
know.
You know,
Yeah, that was appealing to a lot of people.
yeah, the fake news thing, and it wasn't just the term; it was the fact that he actually didn't want to play the puppet game. Like he didn't want to be a part of the puppet show. He's like, I'm going to call you out and I'm not even going to try to, because again, it was a game that everybody knew what was going on. Like certain they were trying to use got you questions and to get, you know, get those specific to answers to make you look bad. But he didn't even play along, and he's like, he actually pushed the curtain back slightly and let you, you know, and expose the fact that it was just a show and
Right.
it was just theater, and that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like you guys are all just journalists, just asking questions and just trying to get to the you know, to the truth and trying to just uncover some lies. It's like, no, you're here because you all have agendas, and there's always a reason to why you're asking certain questions and not asking others, and hiding certain things or whatnot, and you're all a part of the giant problem and the scam. So you know, those type of things I thought were unique to him. Now again, like there's a lot of similarities to him and other past presidents, you know, in regards to some of the people he worked with and some of the things he's done. But there's also a lot of things that were, I think, very unique to him. And so, you know, I also think there's probably a reason why, you know, he was if you believe the assassination attempt was a real assassination attempt, I think it's believable that he's pissed off enough people, especially the CIA and others, that they could plan something like that. The last time it happened, JFK, where they actually, you know, and not even the Reagan one was a inside job in regards to like his Bush's link to the assassin and whatnot. But it always seems like it's an inside job. There's something going on, and it's not just some lone assassin trying, you know, who just is so passionate about his own politics that he wants to, you know, kills a politician he doesn't like. It just seems silly, and it never ever seems to be the actual case and story of what really happened. So
that's where I come into this whole thing, is that it whatever the official story is feels very kind of hard to believe. And the official story is that some kid shot at the president. Now, I never believe the official story, but I can't get on board with they were just trying to graze his ear sort of thing. It's like, that's too much of a gamble. Nobody would agree to do something as insane as that. I don't know. I'll tell you what isn't debatable, and you mentioned this with regard to Google, is that the media, and by default social media, has been trying to pretend like this didn't happen. That to me is an indicator of something else, because the media is so dishonest. It's funny what they will promote and what they won't promote, you know, because you've Las Vegas shooting. All of a sudden, nobody talks about it. Biggest shooting in the history of America. You'd think you could use that as ammunition for gun control for the next 20 years. They never talk about it. Donald Trump assassination. They never talk about it. Can't even find, you type it in, it won't even get prompted in the search engine. Just don't want you to acknowledge that it's there. That, to me, makes me think that it was real. Because if it was a real attempt and they missed and they look bad, they'd want you to forget about it, right? So I don't know. I mean, it's still early. You know, I mean, we're still debating JFK 60 years later, and this thing isn't even 60 days old with Trump, or maybe just about, you know. So
there's a pretty good documentary called What Happened in Vegas, and it's not specifically only about the shooting. It's about actually I thought it was more about the shooting, and it's actually a lot about just the long history of corruption with the local police and all the corruption with the politicians and whatnot.
I've seen this. I saw that movie.
Yeah. So for people who want to watch, so when you look at it, people are like, oh, how could they cover up if this happened? It's like they've been covering up shit way before.
I'm here in Las Vegas now, and as somebody I lived here for a decade, I can tell you that the media and the police department and the casinos have a very unique relationship where they silence a lot of the stuff that goes on here that would be bad for business when you've got 40 million people coming a year through here to dump billions of dollars. You cannot have stories of hookers going rogue and killing guys in their hotel rooms, or people jumping off of buildings or shooting themselves in the restaurants or whatever goes on. All that stuff gets buried. Nobody reads about it. That's because the media and the cops and the casinos have an agreement in place to do that. So I'm not totally surprised that this got, less than attention. But again, it's like, it just goes to like, in a normal world, you would type into a search engine, Donald, assassination of Donald TRU, and it would autofill Trump. The assassination from a couple days ago, that one. Is that the one you're looking for? We're the curator of the world's information. Just can't seem to figure out that you're looking for the Donald Trump assassination. Isn't that weird that happened? What a coincidence. So when you see stuff like that, that's obvious manipulation. That's not accidental. That's Google doing that intentionally. So you have to ask, why would they be doing it? Because they don't want people to have easy access to this information. Why? Why wouldn't they want? Is it because it would make Donald Trump sympathetic? We know how Google feels about the left, right? The left and the right. I mean, they're Team Democrat. We know that. So I think that has to be taken into consideration too when trying to verify the authenticity of this shooting. Is not just the shooting itself, but the reaction to the shooting by the media and by social media and by big tech, because what they've done is they've tried to memory hole this, and that is something you do when there's a problem with the official story. So I don't know.
Do you I know obviously you've been away from your computer or whatnot. You can use this show as a swap cast if you want, and
Yeah,
post
probably will. That'd be a good idea.
It's not, well, it's beneficial because that way we both get an episode out of
I
it.
agree.
And actually we both share it with our platform, so it helps both of us, and we both get an episode out of it, which is always nice. But yeah, so obviously you have a lot going on, so thoughts and prayers with you.
Thank you.
I can't even imagine what how hard it is to probably focus on anything else at the moment.
Yeah. Well, she's one of the nice things about doing this for a while, the podcasts and the books and the Anarchapulco stuff, and this as well, is that you get yourself in contact with some very interesting people in the medical industry that are coming at problems from a variety of different angles. So I've got some very smart people that would be laughed out of an oncologist's office by those traditional doctors, but I don't care. We're taking this a different route. We'll see what happens. It's we already know what the outcome is supposed to be. I mean, I know what that guy said. Like I said, his offer to us was prayers, if that's any indication as to where things are. But our mutual friend Christian Yordanev, who is most definitely not giving me medical advice because that would be illegal, he is instead putting together a comprehensive amount of information that I am then digesting and implementing in my own way, at my own direction. 100%. Definitely not with his help.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm so, and again, these are all things that won't hurt. Like it's you know, if it doesn't help, it's not going to hurt, you know, and I'm not giving medical advice, but I could care. I give medical advice all the time, not like specifically, but I'm just always talking about health and nutrition. So fuck off AMA. I don't care if you get mad. You know, like I'm personal experiences. I always say people who are athletes, people who are gym rats, people who are constantly taking vitamins and trying stuff, like they're the advice you should be getting because they are the guinea pig. You get to try things firsthand. All doctors are doing are reading shit out of a book, okay? And they're saying this is what should happen or that's what should happen. And they don't even have the time or energy to dissect what happened and why it worked one time and why it didn't work another time, because they don't have the time to ask you about your diet, to ask about your training, to ask about your job and what chemicals you're exposed to. So yeah, some people can argue, well, yeah, no, they get feedback. Well, they do, but they don't get as much feedback as you need to really know why something worked or why something didn't work. Now, when you're doing it on yourself, you're factoring in everything. It's like, okay, was it my sleep? Was it what I ate? Was it when I ate? Was it how long I fasted? Was it the vitamin I took? Was it the quality of the vitamin? Was it, should I use a different brand? You are the guinea pig, and you're constantly tuning it and constantly retuning it to try to figure out how to get the best output from your body and your health. So it's like nobody knows better than you, you know? And so without a doubt, somebody like Christian, who also is, you know, always biohacking and trying things out on himself, his feedback is important because it's like, okay,
real important.
Yeah. So it's awesome. So I'll what I'll do is I'll send you this this episode. I can, you know, send it to you in a Google Drive or something like that, and send you the link, and then use it, release it whenever the hell you feel like it. You don't have to worry. I know you're always very generous in regards to making sure you don't release it before I do, but
no, I've already recorded the month of August shows in advance of this, so I knew I was going to be down here for a while. So
the only like when you talk about current events, I'm always concerned about like, oh, is it not going to be relevant?
I try to not do that as much as I can to the extent that if I know I've got some, I try to pick some topics that are more general,
yeah,
that aren't as time sensitive. But
yeah, I do that if I record a show that I'm like, okay, I'm talking about like some time sensitive stuff. I'm like, I need to release this sooner rather than later, because if I well, you know, sit on it, I'm like, by the time I release it, people are gonna be like, what the fuck, like.
Right.
We found out Trump is an alien, and he's like, none of this is relevant, and he's, you know, it's like some crazy stuff. So, and things change like more than ever. Like when I first started podcasting, I'm like, you could talk about current events and it'd be like relevant for like a month. Now it's like relevant for like 24 hours.
No kidding. Yeah, that's less of a factor of a function of podcasting and more just the fact that we're in a crazy world where everything is accelerating. So
yeah,
get ready.
Well, keep in touch. Obviously, good luck with everything, and you know, if I can help, or if you know need somebody to talk to or whatever, like feel free to
appreciate it.
Or hit me up. I'm more than happy to talk, and good luck with everything. Let your family know that we're thinking about them, and
I will.
And much love, and
Thanks,
we'll keep in touch. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us putting this together.
Thanks.
Send it over whenever. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. All right, later.